Coming up on our Finding Better podcast, we're going to be talking about all things public speaking and all things storytelling. Facts inform, but stories transform. And I'm going to be joined by Dr. Danny Brassell, who's known as Jim Carey with a PhD. And he's an expert and a coach in public speaking as well as storytelling. So this is a fun conversation. You're going to learn lots if you're interested in overcoming your fears of public speaking and becoming an amazing public speaker and storyteller. This is the episode for you. Thanks for joining us. Please share this. Here we go. Hello, and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I am your host. And this is where we share real life and real lived experiences and wisdom of people who have been there and done that in terms of finding better in their own lives. Because, sometimes I have found that sometimes the best path to success is by copying others and walking their footsteps, right? Walking the path that they already blazed for us. And today we're going, this is one of my favorite topics, folks, because understanding this can absolutely change your life. Storytelling. Okay. Danny and I are going to talk about storytelling. And let me just tell you a little bit but before I do that, Danny, welcome to Finding Better. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, John. More importantly, thanks for spreading some joy and enthusiasm around the world. We need a lot more of you.
That's it. That's it. It's all about love. It's all about heart. And we're going to talk all about that. But let me just give you a little bit of Danny's background. So he's a speaker, he's a trainer, and he's a coach on leadership and storytelling. We're talking about storytelling today. Maybe I'll have him back to talk about leadership. But Danny is known as Jim Carrey with a PhD. He helps entrepreneurs, he helps individuals, and he helps organizations turn storytelling into business opportunities. Okay. And one of my favorite quotes from him is that facts inform, but stories transform. Danny, welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're here.
I am so happy to be here also. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. You're
Oh
great.
my gosh. Oh my gosh. Let's get into this. Let's talk about storytelling.
Awesome.
So you've been around for a while. You've spoken to thousands and thousands and thousands of people. What's your story? What happened to you, and how did we get to this moment in time right now?
Well, if I was going to write my autobiography, John, I'd probably call it Pivots because my life has taken all kinds of pivots. 30 years ago, I was a journalist, got to cover President Bush Sr. in the 1992 presidential election. I had a great job, got to meet every editor of every major daily, and one editor offered me a job doing the city beat for $16,500 a year. And then a friend told me that they were hiring inner city teachers in South Central Los Angeles for $25,000 a year. So I became an educator for the noblest of reasons, for the high pay. Uh,
No kidding. In South Central.
yeah, in Compton and Watts.
Do
I had a
do
great time.
do you remember a golf course called the Western Avenue Golf Course
Absolutely. I've been there many times.
on Western and El Segundo? I worked
It,
there.
it takes forever because guys are always betting on every shot. So it takes like 5 hours to get the program.
Yeah, that's a place. That's a place. Yeah, from 1977 to 19, oh my gosh, 19 maybe 1982. I worked in the pro
Ah,
shop and
places.
and it was just outside of South Central Los Angeles.
I'll
That's
get you. I'll get you envious. The very first golf course I ever golfed was St. Andrews.
oh
I was traveling
jeez.
with a buddy who was a golfer. He said, "Hey, do you mind if we golf St. Andrews?" I'm like, "Sure." And so he lied and said I had a three handicap, and it was great. It was great because the Scots, they don't care if you stink; they just want you to play fast. Most Americans take their sweet time, and so my very first golf course was St. Andrews. The second golf course was Victoria in Carson, and then Western all the time too.
Yeah, okay, that's right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry for the segue, but
No,
you
you're
and I
good.
have a lot in common.
You got
That's
all kind. I
wonderful.
mean, Fred Couples from the Seattle area. I'm a huge fan. I need to go to
There you
Chambers
go.
time.
But South Central, so you decided to teach in South Central. That's
Yeah,
a tough neighborhood.
it was great though, John. I
Yeah.
mean, I learned a lot about society there.
Mm-hmm.
I learned so. I grew up hating reading. My father was a librarian, and I always hated the public library. It always smelled funny to me. The furniture was uncomfortable. There was always some elderly woman telling me to be quiet. There's always a freaky homeless guy hanging out by the shelves, thinks he's a vampire. I always hated that. But it wasn't until I started teaching in the hood where I saw a lot of my kids didn't have the advantages I had growing up. I was very blessed. Both of my parents were in the home. We were poor, but we always had food on the table. And my parents
Hmm.
always read in front of us kids, they read to us kids, and we always had plenty of access to reading materials. And I basically said, shame on me. And I became very passionate. I taught all age levels from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. I can make that claim because I used to teach English as a second language to engineering students at the
There you
university,
go. There you go.
and it was great. Things were rolling along, and then in 2005, my wife and I attended a real estate seminar, which turned out to be a scam, and we lost everything overnight.
Oh,
And
oh,
well, that's all right. I could focus on the
yeah.
negatives, but I'm like you. I'm a positive person. I learned a lot of
Hmm.
lessons. First of all, my wife is my soulmate. I put her through the ringer. She stayed right by me. She's an incredible human being. Second of all, money is no longer the end all be all for me because I realize you can lose it just like that. Third, I try
Yep.
not to judge other people because if I was somebody who looked at what I've done, I would say, well, you deserve that. But now I realize if you don't know everything about a person, you really don't know anything about a person. Fourth, I became
Mm.
in which I'm always embarrassed to say, but the more I read the Bible, I'm not the first screw up to find Jesus. And fifth, I didn't want to file for bankruptcy. And my accountant said, well, you have to make this much more money this year if you don't want to file for bankruptcy. And so I started speaking on the side and I hit the number right on the number. Well, then the next year, John, he gave me a much higher number and I hit that number right on the number. So in year three, I thought, well, maybe I should set a higher number. And basically,
For myself, yeah.
yeah. During one of the worst economic downturns in American history, I was able to build up a very lucrative speaking business, which was rolling along until 2020 when a thing called COVID came around and people said, well, how's your business? I'm like, oh, the way they just shut down the world overnight, I lost 200 speaking engagements.
Yeah.
Great. But it was good because for years, people had been asking me to coach them. And I always resisted because as a teacher, as a coach, I always hold a very high standard for my students. I actually will not let you fail. I'll push you and make you accountable until you succeed. But now that I work with entrepreneurs and business owners and executives, I find that they're highly motivated and they do the work. And it's been probably the most gratifying work of my life. So that's a very long answer to your short question, but I guess pivots would be the theme of my life.
Well, I'll tell you something. That this podcast is called Finding Better,
Hmm.
and one of the things I've learned over the 130 people that I've interviewed is that happiness isn't out there.
Hmm.
Meaning that happiness isn't out there. We all think that happiness is out there somewhere.
Hmm.
Happiness is right here.
Yeah.
It's right here between the same two ears we all have. And life is about pivoting. Life is about going with the flow. And every pivot leads to something. And
Yep.
you can look for something better, or you can look for something worse. But I love how you described it as pivots.
Yeah, you're right. I think it was Charles Swindoll who said he's convinced as he gets older that life is 10% of what happens to him and 90% of how he reacts to it. And he says,
Exactly.
all your attitude. I mean,
Exactly.
that's what draws people to you, John. You got such a great attitude. Most people are just worry warts and negative Nancy's. I need to be around people like you. I mean, you just pump me up every time I listen to you. I thank
Well,
you.
I'll tell you something. I mean, life's too short. It is too short, right? I mean, you can look at it as half empty, or you can look at it as half full. And I tend to look at the world as a world of abundance and not scarcity. And so anyway, this is not about that. This is about storytelling. This is about storytelling.
Right.
And again, going back to facts inform, but stories transform.
Yep.
And it's one of those things where I often have been asked, and I continue to get asked about storytelling, right? Because I've been complimented several times. In fact, people have referred others to me to learn how I do my storytelling. And to be honest with you, Danny, I haven't got a clue. I don't. I mean, people. So what do I do? What are the secrets of storytelling? And that's why I'm so excited that you're here
Yep.
because I'm hoping that maybe you can shed some light into that because you're obviously a talented and experienced speaker and you've taught lots and lots of people. So So yeah, so what do you mean by that? Facts inform and stories transform.
Yeah, so of all people, it was Stalin who said a million dead is a statistic and one dead is a tragedy. And it's always about, the facts tell, but the stories sell. I work with politicians on their speeches, and I always make the joke that you ever notice that no middle class person has ever run for president of the United States? They always had to grow up in a log cabin and
That's true.
it's the story. It's always the story. No, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Motivational speakers, it's the same thing as well. I was homeless living underneath a bridge and a truck drove over the bridge and it hit a pothole and a book fell out and it hit me on the head. And I was homeless. I had nothing to do. So I read the book. It was about investing in real estate with no money down. And it kind of made sense to me. So I bought one property and then I bought another property. And then my homeless friend said, "Hey, can you teach us how to invest in real estate with no money down?" So that's how I started my real estate coaching program. I mean, it's always the same story. Always.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hear speakers all the time. I grew up in a garage. I'm like, really? You grew up in a garage? You
Yep.
didn't have a house. I
Yep.
washed in my bathtub. I'm like, really? You didn't have a sink, but you had a bathtub.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, one of the things is that when people think about presentation, right? They say that, you know, uh, the number one fear people have is fear of public speaking. I don't know
Yeah.
if I believe that, but I mean, it's said that people fear public speaking more than they fear dying itself. And one of the things that I see all the time is that when people first start out, they start out with their PowerPoint and they start out with all, like you said, all the facts and they'll try to stuff 1,600,000 facts on one PowerPoint slide, and so if you would, what do you see as the typical short journey that a person goes through from when they first decide or they're first told that they have to make a presentation to that process of becoming uh, a really engaging speaker? What happens?
Yeah, I think probably the most frequent mistake I see most speakers make is they like to brag about their accomplishments. And I'm a big believer in what Brene
Yeah.
Brown, wonderful speaker out of the University of Houston, she says, you really need to show your vulnerability. And I completely agree with her on that point, is that you have to understand that stop talking about your successes, start talking about your failures, because not everybody in your audience has succeeded, but they've all failed. And
Right.
the more
Right.
you talk about your own struggles, the more they're going to see themselves in you. And that's what you're trying to do, is you need to get them to see themselves in you. That's the connection that is key. I was working with a financial planner a few months ago, Richard, and he started off his presentation. He'd say, "Oh, I've been a financial planner for 30 years. I've made my clients over $1 billion. I've worked with this famous person and this famous person." And I said, "Richard, time out. It's all right to brag, but what are the three most important elements of real estate? Location, location, location. You can brag, but you're doing it at the wrong part of your presentation." So we changed his
Right.
presentation. So now at the beginning of his talk, he gets his audience. He goes back 30 years ago to the very first client he ever booked, and it's just a comedy of errors. I mean, I'm laughing the entire story. I have no idea why this person invested money with him. He's completely incompetent. And this is the thing that was interesting about it, John, was so Richard, the way he gets most of his clients is like once or twice a week, he has these seminars for an hour at a steak restaurant, and people get a free, like, he gets about 15 50-year-old couples in his audience. They get a free steak dinner, and he talks about his services. And he said that he noticed that it used to be that the guy always had his arms crossed during the presentation, like, what
Mm-hmm.
are you trying to sell me? How much is it going to cost? And he said now that
Mm-hmm.
he switched it, so now the story, he says the same guy is patting his lap because he's laughing so hard. And this is how I evaluate our effectiveness. I mean, a lot of people, they say, "Oh, you got a standing ovation." I'm like, "That's great." "Oh, everybody thinks you're a great speaker." I'm like, "That's great." But the only way we evaluate, is your presentation good, is how many people in your audience decide to take the next step with you. So with Richard, the next step was to book a phone call with him for a consultation. And he said he used to get about 6 of the 15 couples on average would book the call. Now that he's changed it to a story, now he's getting about 12 of the 15. That
Wow.
what you're trying to do, and it can be,
That's
you know,
huge.
it can be an unpaid offer like subscribe to my podcast or book a phone call. It can be a paid offer like buy my product or invest in my coaching program. But this is the only way we're evaluating your effectiveness on stage is how many people want to continue being around you. I mean, so for you, it would be a podcast. And that's probably the second biggest mistake I see most people make is they have lots of different offers and they don't realize they have lots of different offers. So I shared with you today, today's my podcast day for some reason. I'm doing lots of podcasts today. And early on, I was on a podcast, and the woman at the very end of her podcast, she said, "Oh, make sure you like, subscribe, and give us a 5-star rating." And when we were off air, I said, "You just gave your audience three different calls to action. They're going to do none of them. You've confused them.
There you go. There you
Choices
go.
confuse and cause you to lose. That's why Trader Joe's has the highest margin of profit of any grocery store. Because if you go to like your local Kroger and you want mustard, there's 50 different types of mustard. You go to a Walmart, there's all these different types of mustard. You go to Trader Joe's, there's mustard. That's what you get. Oh, here's mustard.
That's
I'm
true.
getting
That's true. Yeah,
yeah,
there it is, right there.
vacation.
Yeah, that's it. That's amazing. And going back to vulnerability,
Mhm,
and vulnerability also breeds authenticity, I think.
definitely.
And and one of the things that I have found is that it's really important to be relatable. So what the things that you tell your folks I mean, be a real person, be a real person. And and when people can relate to you, what I find when I speak is I look for this. I
Hmm.
look for people nodding their head.
Yep.
And what happens, and I think it's really important, even though it is intimidating for a lot of people, is to make eye contact with your audience, right? And
Definitely.
I try to make eye contact with, and if any one of them is doing this, man, I'm on them like bees on honey. I mean, I'm like, I'm gonna make you laugh,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And but it is all about stories. It is
Yeah.
all about stories.
Well, and that's what I like about you, John. I mean, I'm a little bit different than a lot of the coaches out there, is that a lot of coaches, they'll train you to show your vulnerability by talking about the worst moment of your life or the most tragic event. And there's three reasons why I don't do that with people. First of all, what I'm helping people do is how to create what I call a well-crafted story. Uh,
Hmm.
the president, he used to call it his stump speech. In superhero movies, it's an origin story. You can call it peanut butter and jelly. Don't care about that. What this is this is a talk you're going to deliver again and again to introduce yourself to new audiences. And so the reason I like to stay positive is, first of all, the world just survived a global pandemic. Everybody's had a lot of bad stuff happen to them. I don't think we need another sad story. I think we need more stories of hope that lift us up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Second of all, you're going to tell this story again and again. Do you want to tell a sad story again? I mean, I have a friend, and he talks to schools about his daughter was murdered in a school shooting. I mean, I don't know how he does
Uh,
it. Like, you'd have to be a lot stronger than me to talk about the worst day of your life again
no
and again.
kidding.
And
Yep.
then, and third, and this is where people get angry with me. I have one, and I know you're the same way. I have one objective when I'm on stage. I want you to leave feeling better than when you came in. I want you laughing, smiling, happy.
Absolutely.
I think there's something admirable that that's the goal. I believe that people that tell the same sad story again and again, by the 20th time they're telling it, those are now crocodile tears and now they're being
Right.
manipulative. And
Right.
I'm not saying
Right.
it's an effective sales strategy. It's actually a very effective sales strategy. But I personally don't want to have to take a shower after I get off stage because I just manipulated my audience. There's actual
Yeah.
ethical ways to get people to want to do business with you. And so I like people focus. And plus, most of the people I'm working with, they're not speakers. They're people that want to grow their business through speaking. And I'm like, I want you to have fun. A lot of them have stage fright. I'm like, hey, the way you get over stage fright is you have fun. I want you having fun on stage, just like what you said. I'm the same as you, John. Like when I'm in an airport, I'm always looking for at least one miserable person. And if you ever want to find a miserable person, go to an airport. And my objective is just to find that person and get them to laugh or to smile that day. I mean, I admire you that you look at everybody and you're trying to get that. And also, I've learned don't judge the face. I mean, I once spoke to 750 teachers in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I had a guy in my front row for 2 days with his arms crossed, scowling at me. And he comes up to me at the end of the second day. I'm like, here we go. He's like, without breaking any of this. He just says, I just want to tell you, Danny, you're the funniest speaker I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't have judged it based on
Really?
your face. Yeah. But again, you never know. I mean, I once had a woman in my front row and she wouldn't get off her phone. And I wanted to say something, but I
Oh,
tongue. I'm like, all right. And finally, she comes up to me after the presentation. She's like, you're amazing. I was texting all my friends to leave their sessions to come to see yours.
no kidding.
Ooh,
No
I'm
kidding.
I didn't
Yeah,
say
yeah, you just never know. You
it.
just never know.
Yep.
Yeah. So what are some things that folks can do, as they're one of the things I tell people that really relaxes them. They'll come up to me and they'll say, "Gosh, John, you did such a nice job, and we really enjoy seeing you. We've seen you speak before, and how do we get to the point of being able to speak like you?" And the first thing I'll tell them is understand that my first steps in speaking was throwing up
Yeah.
before I hit the stage, and
Hmm.
and they're like, "What?" I said, "Yeah." I would. I'd be in the green room and I'd say, "Excuse me, got to go out for a second." I go
Yeah.
out and I get it out of me, and I come back and go, okay, it's time to go. Right? I mean, it just it's one of those things where they go, "Really? That happened to you?"
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's okay to happen to me too. And I go, it's absolutely totally okay when it happens to you. You're gonna get the butterflies, but the more you do it, the more you're gonna love it, and the more audiences you see, the more audiences you're gonna love.
Yeah.
And it's just a muscle that you just have to continue to exercise. And but the thing but what you do for people is you get them to the point of, I'll call it ignition, right? On the countdown for a rocket, right? You go 3, 2, 1, ignition. And I feel like that's what you help people do. It's up to them to do the liftoff part of it,
Absolutely. Well, I
but you
mean,
get
first of all, John, you're in good company because Barbara Streisand has horrible stage fright. President Reagan used to vomit before every speech. Bill Russell, before he played games for the Celtics, Red Auerbach used to yell at him to puke already so they could go out into the. I mean, so you're in really good company.
really.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know these things. I always say that there's two ways to get better at speaking. First of all, you should watch lots of speakers. I watch at least 10 speakers a day. I watch politicians, I watch comedians, I watch televangelists. I watch them in front of big groups, in front of small groups, in front of men, in front of women. Here, I'll give your audience a ninja strategy. I watch a
Okay.
lot of televised award shows because when the person wins the Academy Award, they only have 45 seconds to connect with their audience. Now, I want to see how they use their time. Now, most people waste their time. They get up there, they're like, I want to thank God, I want to thank the Academy. It's stupid. Nobody's paying attention.
Yeah,
Every,
that's right.
every now and then, a person does an amazing job. So, a few years ago, there was a guy by the name of Joe Walker who won the Academy Award for Best Film Editing. Now, this is Hollywood, John. The front rows, the front of the auditorium. It's all the important people, the actors, and you can tell there's the camera scanning the crowd. They're not paying attention. It's best film editing. And Joe Walker, he gets on stage. He's British and he speaks very slowly and deliberately. He says, "A lot of people don't know this, but when phrased properly, the term Academy Award nominee can be used as an insult." Well, now the camera's scanning the crowd. You see people leaning in, like, what's he talking about? And he says, for example, yesterday I got in an argument with my 17-year-old daughter, and she said, well, Academy Award nominee Joe Walker. All of a sudden, you see everybody laughing hysterically. He gets off stage. Denzel Washington wants to meet him. Sandra Bullock wants to meet him. Brad Pitt wants to meet him. Time magazine said it was one of the highlights of the Academy Awards. 45 seconds. That's what it took him to
No
connect.
kidding.
So the
Yep.
first way, yeah, so the first way to get better at speaking is to watch a lot of speakers. The second way, one of my mentors was a guy named Jim Rohn, and Jim used to say, you can't pay other people to do your push-ups. Translation, and you alluded to this, you got to do the work. You got to go out there and speak. I mean, even the smallest towns in America have an Optimist Club, a Lions Club, a Rotary Club, a Kiwanis Club. They got schools, they got churches, synagogues, temples, chambers of commerce. You got to get out a podcast. There's so many different stages that you can practice. I mean, uh, I was,
Toastmasters.
yeah, Toastmasters would be fantastic. I mean, I was speaking a few weeks ago, and this woman came up to me afterwards. She said she wanted to be a speaker. I'm like, great, that would be great. And she said, oh, I couldn't do what you do. You were so good with the way you answered my question. And I said, time out. The question you asked me, I've been asked that question 500 times before. So I had 500 opportunities to create the perfect answer that just impressed you, but you didn't see those 500 reps. I mean, we were talking golf earlier. Tiger Woods, the reason he's the greatest golfer of all time isn't just because of natural talent. The guy, he worked harder than anybody else, and
Exactly.
he hired coaches to help him. He has a putting coach, he has a driving coach, he has a mental coach. Maybe he should have hired a relationship coach, but he understood the value of
Yeah. Yeah. And well, you said something that just completely, you gotta put in the work, right? And in this podcast, I have all kinds of people who come and talk about their experiences and finding better and finding happiness and just all sorts of things. There is a 100% common line across everybody I talk to, and that line is you got to do the work, right? You got to build the muscle,
yeah.
and it's pain is a great teacher, and pain and failure is as good a teacher as pain is. And I'll tell you, when I think about my life, it's the failures that I remember more than my successes.
Right.
And but you gotta go through it and just embrace it and just know that you're gonna have a bad day. Welcome to life, you know. But as you're coaching people through it, it's wonderful. It's wonderful the things that you tell them because what also strikes me about you, Danny, is that I imagine myself, being one of the folks that you coach,
Mhm.
and I feel like you're giving me permission. I feel like you're saying it's okay. It's
Mhm.
okay. Just move things a little bit more this way and do this. Wait, I can do that? It's okay for me to throw up. It's okay. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
yeah, and so I imagine in my mind that is such a wonderful, wonderful thing that you do for your people is you
I
not only
love
teach them, but yeah, in your
I,
encouragement.
I love working with, I mean, so I had a guy 3 years ago, Jason. Jason drove me nuts. He's 22 years old. He's a worry wart. And I told him exactly what I told you to get better. You got to practice. He's like, I don't know any service clubs. I can't go to schools. Yes. Wah, wah, wah. I hate
Yep.
people like that. And so finally I was frustrated with him. I'm like, okay, do you have a Facebook account? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, we're going on Facebook Live right now. He's like, what? I'm like, we're going on Facebook Live right now. You're going to practice. And so he delivered the 45-minute talk that we had just put together, and one woman from Ontario, Canada, accidentally watched him. And guess what, John? He stunk. And so I said the next day I didn't go on with him. I'm like, I need you to go on again. And so he did it again the next day, and he stunk. But he didn't stink as bad as he did the first day.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, here's the
Yep.
thing, John. Jason is incredible to me. He's done this every single day for the last 3 years, consistently, the same talk for 45 minutes. He now has 6,000 people in his Facebook community. And last year, he almost made seven figures off of that community. And
What?
I don't tell the story to impress you with the money he's made. That's impressive. That's great. But
No, but thousands of followers,
the
thousands of
reason I tell you the story is because of his consistency. He did the work. I love people that do the work. And I'm just so proud of him. And that's what I tell people that are always scared of speaking. I'm like, everything's scary when you're not good at it. You practice. It's a skill. The more you do it. Same thing
That's
with your
right.
podcast. Your first podcast stunk. The second one stunk,
Oh,
but it
you
did.
saw it, did you? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Now you're like a finely tuned oil machine. I mean,
Yeah,
my
whatever.
my youngest daughter, she just learned how to drive, and it's great watching her drive because she's always adjusting mirrors. She's 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And it's so nice to watch her because in a year, I know she's going to be driving with one hand, eating a Big Mac, like putting on lipstick, like music's on. And it's because it becomes automatic the more you start to practice it. And this is and it's any skill. It's not just speaking,
Right.
you
Right.
develop your
Exactly.
confidence the more you do it. This is what you and I were talking about this beforehand. People fear what they just don't understand. The more
Right.
exposed to it, then you're going to feel a lot more comfortable around it.
So for my audience out there,
Hmm.
um, what are two insights? What are two or three little things that they can take away from this as they're thinking about their speaking future?
Great. I'll give you, so here's one of the first exercises I do with clients is, so I want you later on to get a pen and paper, sit in a comfortable chair with a libation of choice. And for an hour, I want you to write down every story that's ever happened to you. And I don't mean the entire story. I just mean triggers, like the time I locked myself out of the car in front of Costco, the time dad spilt mustard on his tie at that fancy restaurant. You'll find in an hour you can come up with about 500 of these triggers. So that's the first part of the exercise. The second part of the exercise, then I want you to figure out, well, what's this story really about? Oh, this is a story about never giving up. Oh, this is a story about loyalty. Oh, this is a story about love. On my computer, I have hundreds of files with literally tens of thousands of stories. And so that way, when I'm delivering presentations, my stories actually have a purpose behind what I want my audience to do. So, for example, I was working with a woman a couple of months ago, Kathy. I always tell people the riches are in the niches, but Kathy, the riches really are in the niches. Her job is she designs saddles for professional polo players. I'm like, wow, that's
Whoa.
definitely that's a niche.
Yeah, that is an itch.
yeah, I'm like, did you make any money at it last year? And she's like, well, last year I made about $800,000. I'm like, I need to learn how to make saddles for polo players. Unbelievable to me. Just amazing.
Wow.
And so we were crafting her offer, and she was having difficulty with it. And I said, well, what do you want your audience to do? And she says, I want to point out that they're trying to do this stuff on their own. They should hire an expert. I'm like, okay, we need to hire an expert story. So I'm like, I'll demonstrate for your audience. So here's a hire an expert. I'll leave you with this. Many years ago, my wife and I had theater tickets. We were dressed to the nines, driving to the theater when we got a flat tire. And my wife said, well, I'll call AAA. I'm like, you don't have to call AAA. I'm a man. I can fix a flat tire. So I opened up the trunk. I got the spare tire. I got the pumper thing and the thing like an X that you take the nuts
Yeah, the jack. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And like 27 minutes later, I had grease all over me. The tire was not changed. My wife is shaking her head like I could have done so much better than this guy. Well, unbeknownst to me, John, he called AAA. And this tow truck shows up, and this 17-year-old punk jumps out of the truck and he fixes the flat tire in 3 minutes flat. You know, I think there are times in life when all of us think we can do it ourselves, but if you want to save time, you want to save money, and you want to save a whole lot of headaches and embarrassment, you hire an expert. And so the reason I'm demonstrating that is here's a story that's demonstrating to the audience what they should be doing without hitting the nail on the head. I'm not saying buy my saddles if you're a polo player. I'm saying you might be going to try and do this alone, but really, if you want to save time, money, and headache, you just should hire me because I know exactly what to do. So
Yep.
that's how you use a story in a very strategic manner. A lot of people they'll I was watching a speaker the other day, and half of they were fantastic anecdotes. They had nothing to do with what he was talking about. And I just thought, wow, I wish I had 10 minutes with this guy to show him, hey, if you use this story here, it'll be much more effective than if you put it here. Yeah, that's what I love. So that's something everybody in your audience can do. Here's another thing, because you were alluding to PowerPoints earlier.
Hmm.
And I always tell that I've never had a person 6 months later say, "Oh, Danny, I loved your PowerPoint. I love that one slide with the 18 bullet points that the 18
Yeah.
bullet points that you couldn't read because they were in a
Yeah.
10-point font." I've never had a person say that. Walt Disney said people think in pictures. And so the way I tell people the way they should use a PowerPoint, watch the nightly news. If you watch any news anchor, the anchor's speaking, but there's always a picture in the upper is it the upper right hand corner? And so, like, if they're speaking about the war, there's like an explosion in the corner. Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
my, Hattie Thompson just turned 110, so they have a picture of an elderly woman with a birthday cap on or whatever. And this is a very easy concept to demonstrate to people. I always say this to people. I want you to, and so I want you to do this, John. I want you to picture an apple in your mind. Think
Okay.
of think of an apple. All right. Now tell me, what did you think of? What was the picture that you came up with?
An apple.
What describe the apple to me?
It was red. It has stem on top of it, and I
Okay.
wanted to eat it.
Excellent. Excellent. So I have some people will
Like the
say
one right in your corner right there.
exactly. So I'm alluding to it. But yeah, so there's a subliminal message. But so some people will tell describe a Granny Smith apple. It's a green apple. Or some people think of an apple pie. Some people think of an Apple computer. Some people think of an Apple iPhone. I've done this exercise with hundreds of thousands of people, John. I've never once had a person say, "Oh, you know what I visualized? APPLE." Because we don't think in words, we think
Ah,
in pictures.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Wow. Okay. Okay. Well, you're amazing. You're amazing. I can see how people can learn to love you. I mean, and the value
It's a
that you can
process,
help people
believe
with.
me.
Yeah, no, but you know what? I mean, and the story that I would have where in terms of your changing the tire would be me refusing to hire a plumber.
Yeah.
And and my problem is that I've gone through that like a dozen times and I still haven't learned my damn lesson. That every time I touch the plumbing, it gets worse, and I end up having to spend more money than if I just called a hire plumber in the first place.
Right.
But yeah, yeah. All right. Well, listen, that was amazing. That was amazing. And so, for those people who are interested in getting in touch with you, we'll have your information on the description and everything of this podcast. But what's the easy way for folks to learn more about you and get more information on what you do?
Well, as a thank you to you, John, and your audience for having to bear with me, I wanted to give everybody a freebie. So if you go to freestoryguide.com, again, free story guide, like a tour guide, freestoryguide.com, I'm going to give everybody their own well-crafted story blueprint. What this is the actual
Cool.
process I take clients through with my team on how we create your well-crafted story. What this does for you is it takes the guesswork out of why am I putting this in this portion of my presentation and helps you create a presentation that's much more powerful. And what this means to you is the peace of mind that you have a much easier tool to increase your income, boost your freedom, and most importantly, have a much greater impact on your audience. And you can get that at freestoryguide.com. And I just want to thank you, John. I mean, the reason you're a good storyteller is because of all of your enthusiasm. This is what you can't teach people passion. You got passion coming out your ears, and I just love it. You got me. I feel like I'm going to run through a wall right now, a brick wall. You got me all pumped up.
Well, likewise, because I know that I've got a lot of presentations in my future, and I may give you a call. And I'm certainly going to go to freestoryguide.com. Again, folks, freestoryguide.com. Okay, and from there I'm sure you'll get. I haven't seen it. Is your contact information and everything on that thing?
Oh, I'm sure it'll put you on some kind of email list for the rest of eternity.
Okay. All right. Danny, thank you. Thank you for joining me. I learned a ton. And I've been doing this for a long time, the storytelling part of it. And I know that my audience has gotten a lot of value from you. So thank you for doing what you do. I love you. God bless you. And hopefully you'll come back sometime and maybe we could talk a little bit more about storytelling and maybe a little bit about leadership. So folks, you got it. You got it. Please share this. Okay. I'm not going to ask you to do anything else. I'm not going to give you a number two or number three. It's just going to be
Perfect.
the one thing.
Perfect. Great
Please
student.
share it. And yeah. And yeah, folks, I love you. God bless you. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye.